fam, what if I told you that a lot of factors that exist in society today are just a way of influencing us to live a certain type of way? Take, for example, religion, or culture, or social norms. I think someone put them in place to get us to live a certain type of way. And guys, I get it. I could be wrong, but again, the good news here is that I stand to be corrected. And that's the whole point of this podcast. If you're an open-minded person willing to challenge the status quo in pursuit for knowledge and deeper understanding of life, then welcome to Joanne on Air podcast. Hey fam, welcome to yet another episode of Joanne on Air. It's such an honor that you take the time every other week when we release new episodes to listen in. Your feedback goes a long way in ensuring that we are very intentional in the people that we have these conversations with in order to make a difference for you each time you listen in. In today's episode, we get to have a conversation that's been a long time waiting. Because I don't know about you and your friend circle, but in mine, we've been having this argument go on for quite some time. And we kept saying we should just switch on the mics and get right at it. There's been a battle, I don't know if you've noticed, low-key somewhere, where Gen Zs are fighting against Millennials, Millennials are fighting against Gen Zs, who's the better generation, who's doing this better. But before we get into it, I just wanted to bring everyone to speed. First things first, let's understand the actual difference that exists between Millennials and Gen Zs. Millennials were born roughly between the years 1981 to 1986, while Gen Zs were born the year after, 1997 to 2012. There's a couple of things that put them apart. When you spread out those years, you will realize that millennials grew up with the internet and technology becoming increasingly famous and integrated into a lot of people's lives. While now for Gen Zs, they grew up entirely in the digital age with technology being an integral part of our lives. So the difference here is that millennials did exist mostly half of their life off the internet and then half of their other life with the internet in place. But for Gen Zs, they were born here and the internet was already here. So you can imagine the different dimension of exposure that offers to both generations, which can be totally different. And I think a lot of problems or experiences or redefinition of what life is to both generations it all starts there. And in today's conversation, we explore it. So I sit down with one Gen Z and one millennial. They are a representation of what these two generations are, and I honestly think they were like the perfect guests to sort of bring out both places, like, oh, I'm coming from this point, I'm coming from this point, for us to have a very informed conversation. And I cannot wait for you guys to hear about it. So without any further ado, I want to talk to B-Ball as we go at these Gen Zs. Do you think Gen Zs are confident or delusional?
Do I think they're confident?
Or delusional? Yeah.
I'm
asking because I was speaking to some friends and we were talking about the ability of Gen Zs to just pick up and leave a job. Like because you're like, I know my worth. Or even in just relationships or like marriage, you're like, I know my worth. Me, I'll not stay here because I know, you get, like, whatever. There's more out there. Life has so much more to offer me. So is that confidence? You're just delusional about the reality of life?
I think in some instances they display a very admirable attribute in confidence. Mm-hmm. I think Gen Zs are more confident than us, the millennials. That's the truth. There are certain discussions we would never venture into. They venture into. For example, I would never, argue with my dad. Not in a million years. Whatever he said was right. Gen Zs, what do you mean not argue with my dad? As in, Gen Zs, all they do is argue with their parents,
Oh yeah, you saw the video of Comedian's son going around and
yes, absolutely, right? And for me, that's a huge plus. That confidence, very, very huge. But the risk with that is, as you mentioned, there's the delusion sometimes. Sometimes there's a delusion of grandeur. There's an assumption they have that they have this know-it-all attitude, which can be very dangerous, right? Because confidence sometimes is mistaken for actual wisdom, or actual knowledge, and the two are very, very different. You can be confident and extremely clueless. So the challenge with very many Gen Zs is, yes, they have the confidence, but many times they misapply it. So, for example, relationship, you have made the mistake, right? But you're like, no, I'm leaving. I will not apologize. And what the relationship requires you to do is take a step back, swallow your pride. Yes, you're a confident person, but swallow your pride, admit you made a mistake, apologize to your partner, and move the hell on. But because there is this talk of, me, like as you said, I know my worth and all this shit and whatever, you up and go, and it's fine. You go and live your life, but you miss a good person, right? Because of that semi arrogance of sorts. So yes, there's a positive in the confidence, but the risk is sometimes they push it a tad too far. And you can even see it online sometimes. When there's discourse, there's an argument happening, and there's two people who are trying to have a back and forth. Sometimes it disintegrates, and then they begin insulting each other. This one says, by the way, do you know how much money I have? We say, I can pay your bills. I can I can pay bills for your family. And you're like, is this necessary? So sometimes they push it a tad too far. And for me, that's the danger that Gen Z's guys kind of possess with them. Yeah.
China.
I honestly feel like it's a mix of both. Yeah. Speaking of confidence, I feel like Gen Z definitely, has or have a strong sense of, self-awareness in some areas. So these kids or people are often very, very, very comfortable expressing themselves, advocating for their beliefs and whatever, they believe in, which can be like a positive thing. A Gen Z now, you tell them this, and then they'll stand up and tell you, no. For me, I feel like it should be done like this and stuff. So
Yeah.
some are right because some are knowledgeable about some of these things, and then some are speaking because they're probably just young and not exposed to some of the situations, and they're just speaking out of ignorancy, but nonetheless they have spoken and have expressed themselves, and they have not let you probably push them down the gutter or what. Nonetheless, whether they know or not, they have gotten the guts and the confidence to express themselves. And then the delusional, on the other hand, there's also, like we say nowadays, delulu, that delulu behavior where Gen Z seems to have an overly optimistic and unrealistic view of the world and themselves. You know, this can probably come from things maybe like how you say, like that joke we made, Mbu, somebody's mental health. They feel like this workspace is not what, and then they like resign. What are you going to eat
Yeah.
tomorrow or next month? So this can
I,
manifest in things like unrealistic, maybe career expectations or a belief that they're entitled to certain things without putting in the work.
yeah, I like why you've brought this, because I was gonna say, which sort of makes me feel like we have zero muscle for like resilience, like because you think, yeah, you've listened to a podcast, you read a book somewhere and they told you about know your worth, blah blah blah, that there is always better for you. The world is like your, what, the world is your, do whatever you want to do, which has led us to the point of like your boss is sort of, maybe, I mean, you've seen how the workforce is lately, so you're like, I'll quit because this place is toxic, my mental health is more important, and then people are asking you like, are you sure you'd rather be hungry but with proper mental health, or you'd rather be
You see,
better?
there's something I said about these generations having subgroups within themselves. You get,
Mm,
like, there's this whole big bracket of Gen Z, but then within that whole big bracket of Gen Z, there are some subgroups. Now, I am a Gen Z. I cannot go to work and because somebody because I was in the boardroom presenting, and then this person keeps coming at me, and then I feel like, oh, my mental health is being affected here. So I'm going to resign from this job. Now, me as a Gen Z, I cannot do that, but there's some other Gen Z that would do that. They wouldn't even let you finish your thing. So that's, I feel like in this whole, like there's a whole big bracket of these generations, and then inside them, there are clusters.
Makes sense. Be Wall, do you think Gen Zs have worked up their muscle for resilience for like the things that actually matter in life, like a career to get to a point of like getting a promotion, you know, moving your way up the corporate ladder? Do you think Gen Zs are really putting in the work, or again back to the delusion part? They're just like, nah, I don't have to hang in here.
I'll be honest with you that I don't think Gen Zs have tough skins. I don't think they're built for for tough times, but perhaps they don't need to be, you know.
Really?
Because I mean, people no longer walk 20 kilometers to go and work or go to school. People don't need to do that. So essentially, the human body doesn't need to wear itself out. Similarly, people no longer sit down and have horrible work policies stuffed down their throats without saying anything. So perhaps you don't need to have a tough skin to undergo all that sexual harassment at work without saying anything. So maybe, and this is me trying to put a positive spin on it, that not having a tough skin might not necessarily be the worst thing, considering the world is heading in a direction where, there's all this wokeness around, right? So people are not going to call you fat, because apparently that's that you can't, people can't be fat phobic, which means you don't need to worry about that. People are not going to insult you about how you look. That's body shaming. You can't do that. So you're not the kind of person who's going to have to develop resilience, so that if they insult your nose or the shape of your eyes or your legs or whatever, you're not paid. So you don't need to grow that resilience. So as I said, I don't think they are as resilient or tough skinned as say millennials, but maybe they don't necessarily have to be that tough, considering the needs, the requirements, the demands of today's world are not as harsh, as they used to be back in the day. But having said that, I just want to add that even knowing that information, right? Even being aware that maybe you don't need to be that tough, there are certain harsh realities of life that you have got to face, right? As a human being, whichever generation cohort you're from, there are harsh realities you have to encounter. For example, when you're in a relationship, your partner is going to piss you off. How do you deal with that? If you're not tough-skinned, at the first sight of discomfort, you're going to want to end the relationship. So you need to be able to be tough enough to take some pain, because chances are you're also giving your partner some pain. It's a give and take, right? So you have to be tough-skinned. And how else are you going to develop that tough skin other than being flung into the wild, where it's very unforgiving? And millennials now don't want to be flung into that unforgiving world. They do not. If I come to your workplace and you guys are sexist, or you're racist, or I don't know, whatever, all these other things, I don't want to work there, right? Which means I want to work in a place where everybody agrees with my thoughts, and so there's no room for disagreement. So that little thing for me is where the worry is. And I'm not necessarily saying that you should condone all these horrible things. I'm just saying that you need to be panel beaten by life into a place where, when these scenarios happen in your personal life, you're tough enough. When your child walks up to you and insults you, for example, or your child wakes up one day and decides to start doing drugs, you don't commit suicide. You're tough enough to handle the situation and deal with it and help the child without escaping or running away from it, or saying, the world hates me, or my life has ended, and all these things, or I'm depressed. You have to be able to face it and deal with it. So yeah, that's just what I think.
I think Gen Zs have been given the freedom. We've been told that our the reward for this life is freedom. I get to choose what to do when I want to. So I can choose to leave the job. I don't have to hang in there because they are sexist, or my boss is intimidating, or they're making me work extra hours that are not even paid for. A normal millennial would be like, hey, I'll tag it out because that's what guys say. Like, hey, it would be a rainy day and you are not allowed to show up late. But now Gen Z is like, how do you expect me to get to work? It is raining all over Kampala. How am I supposed to maneuver the potholes, the swampy roads? Like, how am I supposed to manage? But again, now for Gen Zs, it's more like, I don't have to. Yet millennials would be like, Omanyi, let me get my kavera or this umbrella, sit in this taxi and tag it out. Then, which brings me to what's on my mind. I'm like, I think millennials were told the reward for this life is something different compared to what the Gen Z is told. So I think for millennials, it was more of tangible things. Like,
Are you saying
oh,
millennials romanticize suffering?
I wouldn't necessarily put it like that, but yeah, so sort of. No, seriously, more like the rewards of this life are the big things, the car, the big land, the huge house, huge family, which again, those things don't come easy. They have challenges which sort of now have some sort of suffering. You have to save up, you work a big job, you don't spend that money because you're being frugal to try to create that eat life, which includes bits of suffering. Now Gen Zs are like, hey, eat your money. If the money you have cannot solve your problems, please go and eat some of that money, which makes millennials very angry that Gen Zs are laissez-faire life, and now
And
that's why Gen
yeah.
Zs say millennials are the kind of people that romanticize suffering, like Oyagala, Nkube, but I shouldn't buy the car because I don't have a house yet.
Listen, John, I'm with you. I'm with you. Up to a certain point,
Mm-hmm.
right? That I yes, and China probably hinted on it that there's a certain romanticizing that we millennials normally do of suffering and whatnot. I think for me, without necessarily calling it romanticizing, I think what we millennials do a lot is we are closer to the ground, yeah. And because we've been grounded in certain things, that if the knowledge is that if anything is to change in your life, it will be an effect of something you have done, right? Which means things don't just change. However, with Gen Zs, sometimes things actually
Yes.
just change. For example, you get onto your phone, you open your
Mm-hmm.
TikTok account, you share a few videos, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You get famous, you get hosted somewhere, you get a deal to
Mm-hmm.
to partner with Nike or Adidas or whatever.
Right.
So you haven't really
Yeah.
done too much, right? Now for us back in the day,
Mm.
you didn't just get those deals, you had to work extra hard. So
Yeah.
a certain section of the millennials are, for lack of another word, somewhat aggrieved, and they feel cheated somehow, that
Yeah.
most of the success we got was through hard work,
Mm.
right? And yet some of these
I
kids
hear
today,
you.
yeah, some of these kids today, they haven't done shit, and they are balling, right? You go to these popular bars in Kla, and you find Gen Zs popping expensive bottles, right? And you're saying, what the hell? Where are you getting this money? They're wearing expensive outfits. What are they doing? They just have videos on YouTube, videos on TikTok. They're influencers. They're socialites. And so there's that little discomfort that the millennial has, in that the way I got into this world and the way I have grown up viewing success, it's something earned, it's something fought for, it's something worked hard for, right? The Gen Z, on the other hand, has been told, dude, if you have access to the internet, you can become an overnight celebrity. You don't need to go and toil and sweat. No, you can become a success overnight. So that little disconnect, and for me the challenge is that many Gen Zs buy into that, right? Which is not a bad thing, but they waste away a good chunk of their lives trying to hit that gold mine, right? Trying to find that one thing that will make them make all these millions. And yet when you go back to the harsh reality, that even that success that seems like overnight success, It's actually not overnight.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work that has gone into it. There's patience, there's time. This person has probably been sharing their content for a very long time. Why can't I also make the money that they are making? But they've built that thing over time. It's just that their hard work is different from the millennials' hard work. So that's just a little.
But the hard work is there, right?
It is there. It's there, absolutely.
The hard work is there. So when you mentioned
Absolutely.
that thing of you go to the bars and then you see a Gen Z popping bottles and what, yet all they just do is post on TikTok and YouTube. I was almost asking you, so you don't think when they post on YouTube or TikTok they don't put in the work, but then
No, they do.
later,
They do, but this is why. Yeah, this is why I mentioned earlier on that perhaps they don't need to put in that physical hard work like we did, because the nature of their hard work is probably smarter. And now with things like AI, you don't need to break your back. You don't need to to burrow holes into your brain to come up with ideas. AI provides some of these things for you. So maybe we don't need to demand too much from them because a lot of their hard work, for lack of a better word, has kind of been softened, so to say. But it remains hard work anyway. So yeah.
And I wanted acknowledgement that whether it is hard work or not,
it is still hard work.
It is hard work.
Yeah.
It is.
Bill, I think you've made a very valid point when you said millennials are grieving some sort of like they had to work 10 times harder for the things that come so easy for Gen Zs now. And hey, I totally get it. It explains the rumors in the corridors that a lot of millennials are just angry at Gen Zs because you're like, hey, I had, do you know what it took me to just arrive here, and what for you just put on your makeup and posted a picture on Instagram and you've built a community overnight.
Good example is when I joined Twitter. I joined Twitter in 2009, right? It was fairly new in UG. From 2009 up to about 14 or thereabout. That's about what, 5 years or so. I had what? I had like 10K or 15K followers, right? Over that period of time. Now, I know people who joined Twitter in 2019, 2020, 2021. They have 200,000 followers, 300,000, 500, a million followers, right? Yeah, my growth online has been organic, right? In that it's been slow and measured, and I can account for almost all of my I don't know, 85,000 followers, right? I've seen the growth myself. Now these kids have had spurts whereby he gets online today, says something or does something. Tomorrow he has 10,000. A week after that he has 15,000. After that 25, 35, and within say half a year, the dude has 200,000 followers, right? So automatically, a person who has taken a longer time growing his account is going to sit back and think to himself, A, the ground is not leveled, right? But also B, may I've worked harder to get here. This dude just woke up overnight and is way bigger than I am. So there's that little, discomfort that naturally will be there. The thing,
or jealousy.
No, it's not even jealousy. It's not even jealousy because, again, for me, the reasons why I got online, for example, I was just having a good time, right? So even up to now, the things that I do are things that I like. Now, the person who gets online now, they very rarely, and if their goal is to like have followers and whatnot, they will very, very rarely say what they honestly feel. They will say what they think will get them followers, which are two different things. I don't know if you see what I'm saying, right? So their approach to growth online is different from my approach. Their approach obviously will get them followers because they're going, okay, so what's trending today? Let's talk about that. Now, me on this other hand, I'm actually the exact opposite. What's trending today? I don't want to talk about that because chances are everybody is talking about it and everybody has misguided opinions. So the way we approach things is different between millennials and Gen Zs, but that little discomfort will always be there. That's
It reminded me of a certain joke that I saw of probably two rich people who are in probably in the same space at the same time, and then both of them are driving G-wagons, and then this one that got their G-wagon after suffering is downing this one's G-wagon because their parents just bought it for.
Handed it to them.
Yeah, so because when
Yeah, but
you suffered, you think you really, you've really earned it, and there are for what? Like,
Mm.
I don't know if you
yeah,
get.
I
I don't know if you
have
get what.
China. China, I have
Yeah.
a response to that. I think that's typical human
Yeah, behavior.
behavior
Yeah, natural.
response.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
like you would be shocked that the person who, even for Gen Zs, and I think that part of us is going to be exposed when what we will say when the next gen alpha gets to that
Mm.
point. You
Yeah.
will be shocked at how that feeling will be put out of you when he mentioned something about the entitlement. Because I mean, I've been around kids who are like in that generation, and yeah, their entitlement is out of this world. Like by default, you find yourself feeling like
Yeah.
I've had that feeling. I was having a conversation with someone else. I've had that feeling of like, hey, hard work is not, it does not necessarily mean you'll make it in this life, because as a normal human being, you're smarter, you're working way harder, but then you see people who are not working as hard, not as
Absolutely.
smart. Yeah, they're in
Absolutely.
places that are way better than you are. By default, you're inclined to feel like that feeling. I don't want to use the word jealous, it's a big word, but you're inclined to feel like clearly we are not the same people. Like I've had to work 10 times harder for
Yeah.
this
Yeah. It's
kind
not.
of success. I want, as we wrap up, guys, we've done over an hour and I don't want to keep you guys any longer. I want us to wrap up with one last thing around ambition and goals and rewards in this life for Gen Zs and millennials. I think we have different rewards. I want to start with China. I don't know what that is for you, but I know for a fact that it's different from what millennials are, because I've had a conversation prior this episode with some friends while I was trying to like get my mind triggered and trigger their minds as well, and we're talking about how for you millennials be all it was the tangible things, like I said earlier. For Gen Z's, it's the freedom. I want to be able to travel the world whenever I work remotely. Like it's the freedom of, like, that's why they cannot hang in there, because then you're taking away my freedom. For millennials, you're told to push for the wife, push for your kids to go to the posh schools. And that's why you see a lot of people now in this current generation, they don't want to have kids, or they're doing a lot of family planning to have like spaced out kids, so that, because once you start that journey, it's a never ending cycle of you relentlessly taking away from yourself for your wife, for your kids, only for you to wake up at 60, you're miserable, you're alone,
Mm.
and you die alone. Unlike Gen Zs who are leaving for the experiences of like, I want to go see all the fancy places. So I don't know if China, that's it for you. If Bill, that's it for you.
I think most, well, a good number of millennials, owing to the fact that a lot of their history was anchored in in physical presence, in the sense that you needed the tangibles. The tangibles were more important than the intangibles. So much that sometimes they sacrificed a lot of the intangibles just so they can secure some of those tangibles. And some of the tangibles, I mean, financial security, right? You have yourself, a partner, family, assets and things like that. Those are things you can actually touch. And most of why, and for us, because we are somewhat of hybrids, you know, because we came from that era where assets were a big deal. Your father had to have cows or land,
Yeah.
huge gardens. But then we transitioned into a space where you can have all the money and still have zero happiness, right? So
Yeah.
there's a bit of a hybrid development we've gone through, most of us millennials, and that's why a good number of millennials somewhat understand where the Gen Zs come from, because,
I
as I
like the
say,
word hybrid. It's very
sorry.
important to this. I like the word hybrid. It's very important to this conversation.
Yeah, because while I was born, before the internet was there, the internet came when I was born, right? So a part of me lived before there was internet. A part of me lived when the internet came. So why it was important for many millennials to kind of understand the before and the after, was because there's a reality you grew up in, but then there's this new reality that's coming that you must embrace. And that's why, for me, I think the millennials are probably the most grounded, and they are the closest to reality in sense of living life. Because yes, you want these tangibles with you, but you also understand the importance of freedom. You understand the importance of having peace of mind. You understand the importance of mental health, right? So we are a fusion. We are a mixture of what was, and what is in the future. That's why, for me, I think the millennials, I don't want to say are better, although that seems to be the conclusion. That's why I'm saying that we are probably the best. No, well, we are probably the most rounded, right? The most rounded generation. Yeah.
Honestly, for me, I feel like many millennials are driven by a desire to find probably purpose and meaning in their life. Like they're structured to that. However, a Gen Z is highly motivated by a desire for, autonomy, independence. They want to have control over their lives and careers, and then I don't know, I feel like the approach to ambition and stuff, I would prefer that not because I'm Gen Z, but I would prefer that Gen Z way of doing it, but with purpose and maybe guidance. And then when it comes to probably goals, I feel like for millennials, it's probably more about achieving financial security, stability, and making positive impacts in society, which a Gen Z would also want. But then a Gen Z, I don't know, I feel like they just want to probably build a sustainable future for themselves and everybody, but in the way they feel like is right, not in the way they've been programmed. Overall, I think both millennials and Gen Zs have a lot to offer to anyone. They have a lot to offer to the world. It's just the approach that is different according to what we have been exposed to. So me, because I don't know, it's unfortunate that I don't know how millennials probably lived, and it's fortunate for millennials because they now know both worlds. Me, all I know is the internet world and the Gen Z world. So I cannot stand and say that the Gen Z world is better because I have not tested
Yeah, but
the other.
China, if you were to be objective, right, given all the facts on the ground, yeah, I know even as a Gen Z, you're pulled towards them, right? You are them, they are you. But if you were to be objective and look at all the facts on the ground, in terms of the life that you've read or watched or heard that the millennials lived, in the sense of things like letter writing and those 90s R&B songs where there was expression of love and poetry and all these things, and what is happening today. If you looked at everything in totality, what do you think objectively?
Okay, objectively, I think millennials lived quite an interesting life. Yeah.
Okay, that's a good way to put it.
I feel like there's a bat coming, a big bold bat.
Yeah, but I still think really there's a lot to offer to the world by millennials and Gen Zs. It's
Absolutely.
just the approach that's different. And I mean, we're all driven, we're all passionate, we all want to make a difference, but in a different way. How a millennial will want to is not how I'll want to. And our, different experiences and perspectives just need to complement each other,
Okay. My wrap up, I think what China says makes sense. Take, for example, we came together to I think we make the perfect team of the brilliance and the rootedness of millennials, and now with the quickness and very flexible energy of Gen Zs, I think we make would make a beautiful product. But if I were to choose, honestly, I think I would choose millennials over Gen Zs because
Have you been lying to us about your age all along?
no, not really. Like I've seen I've seen both worlds honestly, and if I had to choose, I would choose being a millennial because the fact that the biggest influencer of our time as Gen Zs was the internet technology happening, and honestly, as much as that came with like its greatest inventions of our time, at the same time it had a negative effect, and the fact that now millennials had a phase where they really didn't have to depend on these things, they lived by themselves and had to figure it out, and then of course eventually the internet came on, swept them off their feet, and then they still found their rooting. I think for me makes sense compared to Gen Zs who we are so loud, very unrooted. We are very like so. As we wrap up, guys, we've already sneaked in our names. I'm just gonna give each one of you a chance to just introduce yourselves and then tell us one thing people would not believe about you. So, like how I'd say, hi, my name is Joanne. A lot of people don't think that I can cook.
Oh, surprise, surprise.
So you're surprised?
No, that's
Are you saying you don't think I can cook?
but you said a lot of people. A lot of people. I represent a lot of people. So
Okay, cool. Who wants to go first? Ladies first, be well. Tomorrow is Valentine's, but yeah, ladies first. China.
Hi, my name is China. A lot of people wouldn't believe that I would eat rice and beans every day.
say
I don't know
what?
what to say. Am I supposed to say you or
I mean, because I
Like
feel
you'd
like
never tire of it.
I feel like anyone would probably look at me and think, does this chick even has she tasted beans before or what? But I feel
please?
like
Are you hearing these Gen
hand
Zs?
plate
Be
of
well. Are you hearing these Gen Zs? What do you mean?
you asked.
I know. I'm just messing with you. Be well. Your turn.
um. Hmm. Hi, my name is Biwall. Many people might not believe this, but I am actually a hopeless romantic. I thought we agreed not to laugh.
Hey,
We
I thought we agreed
said
not to
we
laugh.
don't judge. Okay.
Good.
I'm
So, yeah.
not laughing.
Somebody is.
Sorry. Sorry, guys. No, seriously, both of you, thank you for making the time and remaining respectful to voice your opinions.